They were considered extinct in the wild, remnants of a lost ecosystem. Yet, in a bold action that surprised the scientific community, China let a group of these ancient horses roam free in one of its toughest deserts. Specialists referred to it as craziness. What happened next astonished the local community and left scientists around the globe puzzled as they searched for explanations. This is the tale of a species revived and the desert that attempted to defeat it. The Last Hope. In the year 1969, a border patrol from Mongolia surveyed the landscape and noticed a solitary stallion. Dust danced around its hooves before it disappeared into the quiet of the steppe. At that moment, no one realized it would be the final verified sighting of a wild Przewalski's horse. For many years, the species, which was once an important part of Central Asia's legends, had quietly disappeared. It was not always like this. Called taki or spirit horses, these tough creatures had been running across the steppes for thousands of years. They were never entirely domesticated or completely tamed. However, the 1800 century brought significant changes. In the year 1879, the Russian explorer Nikolai Przewalski presented a skull and a hide to the St. Petersburg Academy, turning the phantoms of the plains into scientific samples. Interest quickly shifted to capturing them. By the 1920s, zoos in Europe showcased them as unique attractions, rare remnants from a vanishing wilderness. However, political unrest, expanding human populations, and over-drilling for water in Mongolia and China were harming their natural environments. Hunting brought them even nearer to extinction, and when the wild population was completely eliminated, just a few survivors were left, kept in captivity. The tale might have finished there. Only 12 unique horses remained, 5 males and 7 females. That's hardly sufficient to create a sustainable gene pool. Some specialists proposed preserving their DNA in hopes that cloning technology would improve. However, something extraordinary took place. Zoos around the globe engaged in an uncommon conservation effort. They worked together. In 1959, the International Stud Book was created. It was more than just a record. It turned into an essential resource. No individual zoo was permitted to keep bloodlines to themselves. Breeding pairs were thoughtfully arranged. Horses were transported by air across continents to breed. Gradually, the population in captivity increased. By 1980, over 1,000 Przewalski's horses existed in zoos and reserves. They remained in captivity, yet they were no longer close to disappearing forever. That's when China proposed an ambitious plan. In 1985, the Ministry of Forestry made the choice to return the taki to their natural habitat. They selected a desolate area in Jimuser County, Xinjiang, covering 1.5 square miles of scrubby land. Although it lacked resources, it was untamed, which was precisely what these horses required. In the following 2 decades, 24 Przewalski's horses were brought in from zoos in the United Kingdom, Germany, and the United States. They didn't travel in luxurious comfort. Instead, they were transported in Ilyushin Il-76 cargo planes, with each horse placed in a cushioned crate. While making a stop in Novosibirsk, misters provided a light mist of water to keep them cool. Once they arrived in Jimusar, the true challenge started. The quarantine period lasted for 30 days. Veterinarians checked for all recognized horse diseases. Hand feeding was not allowed. Caretakers spread native grasses such as stipa and saxol throughout the enclosures to help prepare their taste for the desert. They even scattered wolf droppings around the fences to trigger their natural instincts without the risk of real predators. Meanwhile, geneticists were observing closely. Due to thoughtful pairing and advanced DNA methods, the Jimusar herd was able to preserve more than 95% of the recognized wild genetic variety. An impressive accomplishment. But numbers alone weren't sufficient. To genuinely restore their wild nature, the horses required more than just safety. They required freedom. In 2001, Chinese scientists took an unexpected action. The outcome left even the most experienced biologists astonished. Building a breathing gene bank. Taking care of a horse is straightforward. Provide hay, water, and a good fence. However, ensuring the survival of an entire species' genetic future is a much tougher task, especially since every Przewalski's horse today comes from only 12 original ancestors. This creates a risky genetic bottleneck, and a single mistake could lead to disaster. Therefore, in Jimasar, China established not only a breeding facility, but also a vibrant gene bank driven by natural instincts and intelligent design rather than technology. The idea is clever in its straightforwardness. 4 satellite fields encircle the central base. Within each field, one stallion governs a harem of 6 to 8 unrelated mares. However, there's a catch. No group remains in the same location for over a year. Each spring, everything gets rearranged. The adults are sedated, placed on flatbed trucks, and moved clockwise to the next pasture. This helps keep the bloodlines diverse and simulates what occurs in nature, where young mares spread out to prevent inbreeding. The work continues beyond that point. Unseen, advanced genetic software monitors everything. When a foal arrives, a sample from its umbilical cord is recorded in a national DNA database. The system traces genetic markers all the way to the 1959 International Stud Book, utilizing cloud-based tools to identify potential risks. Possible pairings highlighted in red indicate excessive genetic similarity, whereas those in green suggest they are suitable. This has led to the creation of a digital dashboard that breeders humorously refer to as horse Tinder. It also includes attractive photos of stallions with flowing manes and a rating that reflects each horse's genetic diversity. The figures may be interesting, but the mission is important. Since the introduction of this technology in the year 2015, the inbreeding rate of the herd has significantly decreased by more than 40% in just a few years. A big achievement in the fight to protect the species. Now, let's discuss the behavioral aspect. These horses came into a world of safety, protected from danger. However, nature is harsh and doesn't consider bloodlines. Therefore, their caretakers instruct the young horses to feel fear, just like their forebears did. They dress in plain coveralls, steer clear of making eye contact, and move quietly. Every 2 weeks, wolves on leashes and with muzzles are taken to the fence where trainers can see how the horses respond. Initially, the horses are anxious, but with each session, they calm down more quickly. They are adjusting well. All of this naturally requires funding. Transporting one horse from Europe to Xinjiang costs almost 800,000 yuan, which is over $100,000. To assist with raising money, the project creates brief videos featuring running foals, undulating sand dunes, and soothing music. Companies are increasing their support, which is essential. One dairy brand even features images of the Przewalski's horse on its yogurt lids and covers the cost for genetic work in exchange. In the year 2020, 3 stallions came from Berlin. As the final insurance documents were completed, project leader Gao Xing softly said just 2 words: "It's finished." They possess the data, the variety, and the necessary preparation. Within a few days, 30 young people embarked on their journey to the vast desert. The gene bank now had the capability for breathing, movement, and natural instincts. Choosing a harsh classroom. If you were attempting to restore a species that has gone extinct, would you select a location where summer temperatures reach 108 degrees Fahrenheit, winter plummets below -22, and the rainfall hardly fills a coffee cup? China did. Researchers selected Kalamili, a rugged area in the Dzungarian Gobi, not despite its harsh conditions, but because of them. It's arid, it's scorching, and it's frigid. Only about 30 types of edible plants thrive in this place, and that is exactly why it was picked. For a horse to thrive in this environment, it cannot depend on humans for assistance. It needs to rediscover its wild instincts. This place wasn't a controlled zoo, it was a survival challenge. The toughest lesson arises from the scarcity of water. In favorable years, melting snow forms small ponds throughout the reserve. However, during drought years, those ponds disappear, leaving just small seeps, some not much larger than a volleyball court. A survey using camera traps in the year 2022 revealed only 42 dependable water holes across an area of 19,000 square miles. That's fewer than one for every 60 miles, which is much lower than what most hooved animals require. How did the horses manage? They were not by themselves. Kalamili was inhabited by nearly 6,000 kulan, or Mongolian wild asses. These creatures are quicker, require less water, and have thrived in these tough conditions for many generations. Researchers were concerned about possible violent conflicts over the scarce water sources, but an unexpected event occurred. Infrared video showed the horses patiently waiting for their turn, allowing the kulan to drink first. This unspoken rule wasn't taught in a formal setting, it developed organically. By gathering at the water holes, the horses steered clear of conflicts and discovered how to live together peacefully. For creatures that had not encountered the wide-open meadows for many years, this was a significant advancement. Soon after, the wolves arrived. A survey conducted by drones in the year 2021 revealed that there were 14 gray wolves monitoring the reserve. These weren't animals from the zoo, they were genuine, organized hunters. Instead of going after the mares, they focused on the young stallions that roamed alone without a group. Rangers noted 3 wolf kills during the first winter alone. Initially, it may seem cruel, but ecologists recognized a greater truth: harmony. These assaults reflected the typical hunting behaviors found in wild groups in Mongolia. The plants also offered valuable insights. Botanists studied the grasslands, and their findings challenged previous beliefs. The regions that were grazed lightly by the horses ended up being healthier. Roots extended further into the ground. Steppe grasses, an important element of the local diet, flourished, producing fresh shoots that secured the soil from being eroded by the wind. The most ironic part is that these wild horses were not damaging the desert. Instead, they were aiding it. But nature has another factor to consider: climate change. Projections indicate that by the year 2050, Kalamili's capacity to sustain life might drop by 15% as a result of increasing temperatures and changing weather conditions. Researchers aren't merely observing, they are actively charting possible paths into the cooler, wetter eastern foothills. With the help of new, lightweight GPS collars, the horses will create these new routes, revealing to scientists in real time how adjustments can be made. The reality is that the desert is not just a setting, it serves as a training ground. The gate opens. The morning of August 27, 2001 was bright and calm, creating a peaceful atmosphere that leads one to believe that nothing significant is forthcoming. However, behind a wire fence in the Kalamili Nature Reserve, located in the remote northwest of China, history was on the verge of unfolding. 27 Przewalski's horses, 11 females, 9 males, and 7 young ones, were at the edge of a world they had never experienced. They were raised in captivity and looked after with great care. Now, it was time to set them free. Rangers carefully guided the group along a gravel path leading to a gap in the wire fence. This moment would eventually be known as Release Zero. There were no tranquilizers or ropes involved. The halters had been taken off earlier at the base camp. What occurred next was driven by their natural instincts. The main stallion stopped at the entrance, its ears flicking. It sniffed the air and then dashed into the desert. The rest ran after it, their hooves pounding and dust flying up. In just a few moments, they disappeared over a small hill. No one trailed behind them. There were no drones watching their every step, no live broadcasts, or tranquilizer weapons ready. And then there was quiet. It took 3 days before they could be located again. A hired plane eventually detected their signal 37 miles southeast of where they had been released. The horses were gathered close to a parched riverbed, but the scientists were intrigued not only by their spot, but also by what they discovered. an unknown spring, which even the most seasoned wildlife rangers had never seen. The GPS information verified it. In only 72 hours, these horses discovered water in one of Asia's most arid and challenging terrains. At that point, the field teams understood that this desert was now more the horses' home than theirs. The adventure that came next was truly extraordinary. Within a few weeks, the rewilded horses began to act like their wild forebears. Young males separated from the group and formed close bachelor groups. Then, after 9 weeks of being released, an important event occurred. Rangers recorded the first intense fight between stallions. Two male animals faced each other, their ears back, nostrils wide, and sides heaving. However, rather than engaging in a violent fight, they ended up making a series of squeals that signaled dominance without causing harm. This was more than just a minor conflict. It showed that natural social order was being restored. The release was not just a single event. It marked the beginning of a long-term strategy. In 2004, an additional 10 horses were set free, and then in 2008, another 18 were released. In May of 2024, yet another group of 18 arrived from the Dyer Conservation Station. This raised the total count of wild horses in Xinjiang to 146. They were not merely surviving, they were flourishing. Even during the harsh winters of the area, the horses stayed in great shape. When evaluated for fat and muscle, most received an average score of 3.5, surpassing many farm-raised horses. Their home range grew from an initial 75 miles to more than 410 miles by the year 2007. They weren't merely moving around, they were searching for new plants that emerged with the desert rains, returning to crucial water sources in the middle of summer. Every success story comes with its challenges. Two mares lost their lives after consuming plastic feed bags that had drifted in from a nearby camel camp. This tragic event served as a harsh reminder that, despite good intentions, wildlife remains vulnerable to today's litter. The reserve quickly took action by prohibiting all single-use bags within its area. However, not all misfortunes could be avoided. One stallion injured its leg in a hole made by a ground squirrel. The rangers had a tough decision to make: either rescue the creature and risk damaging the project's goals, or allow nature to run its course. They opted for the second option. In an actual wilderness, there aren't any emergency veterinarians. The stallion limped for a few months before disappearing from satellite imagery. What happened to it was never known. Still, this wasn't a failure. It was simply how things are. Rewilding involves genuine risk. As news circulated, interest grew. The reserve set a limit on visitors, permitting only 400 each year. Tickets sold out within days. Tourists were transported in electric buses to a viewing area, where they looked through binoculars. Just one look at a foal could quiet the audience, for even from 1,000 feet away, the awkward jumps of a young colt could bring about tears and amazement. Genetic revelations. In the year 2018, evolutionary biologist Ludovic Orlando and his team revealed groundbreaking findings that transformed conservation science. They sequenced 42 ancient horse genomes and compared them with modern samples from various regions in China, Mongolia, and Europe. What they found was amazing. Przewalski's horses, which were believed to be the last true wild horses on the planet, are actually the offspring of animals that were domesticated by the Botai people in northern Kazakhstan around 5,000 years ago. The news created a huge stir in the media, with some people feeling angry and saying it threatened the idea of keeping wildness intact. However, those directly involved had another perspective. They contended that behavior and ecological importance were much more significant than genetic background. The International Union for Conservation of Nature has decided to keep the Przewalski's horse on its red list and is calling for more research. The situation in the Chinese desert has amazed scientists everywhere. However, this extensive effort is far from finished. Another project is on the horizon, one that is so grand and ambitious that it has garnered support from people all over the globe. Spreading hoof prints across China. After the Kalamali herd was formed, a larger concept started to emerge. Could wild horses be brought back to other neglected regions of China? In the year 2021, conservation planners introduced an ambitious initiative known as the Three-Star Project. The objective was bold. By the year 2035, establish 3 self-sustaining groups of Przewalski's horses, with at least 150 breeding adults in each, spread throughout the country. The approach resembled a wise investment strategy. Always diversify your assets. If one group faces fire, illness, or drought, the remaining groups will endure. The initial expansion location was the Dakingshan Mountain National Nature Reserve in Inner Mongolia, 700 kilometers east of Kalamali. It began with 13 original members, 4 males, 7 females, and 2 young ones. Their journey was approached with great seriousness. Military logistics teams transformed flatbed train cars into mobile stables, equipped with misting fans, padded walls, and video surveillance. The managers held the group for only 30 days before allowing them to leave. This provided an opportunity to chart nearby water sources and ready the grasslands. The event attracted a combination of park authorities and Kazakh herders who were about to become caretakers. As the young horses walked into the grasslands, wind turbines turned quietly in the distance. Nature's beauty and contemporary technology came together in one extraordinary image. However, Dakingshan is not merely a replica of Kalamali. It sits at a greater altitude, receives more rainfall in the summer, and features taller grasses. The GPS collars indicated that the horses did not need to wander as far because of the improved availability of food. However, winter introduced fresh challenges. To manage the heavy snow, engineers set up 3 basic snow fences made of slatted wood. These structures help reduce the movement of drifting snow, forming sheltered areas where the horses can burrow to find food. This is a man-made solution inspired by the way animals typically utilize rocky areas, even though there are none present. The next destination was the Hexi Corridor in Gansu Province, an area steeped in the history of the Silk Road. In the year 2023, 8 horses traveled south to this sandy flatland, abundant with sodium-filled Saxol bushes. Biologists think that the minerals might benefit nursing mares' health. There were worries about nearby human activity, particularly with a new road near the border. However, sound sensors indicated that the road only lowered the stallion's vocal range by 10%, which is still considered safe. These moves show more than just practical lessons. In Gansu, stallions used to wide-open areas were reluctant in the thicker bushes. The mares took the lead, and by tracing their paths, scientists observed a wider variety of food choices. This finding could influence future relocations. This indicates that the most successful pioneer isn't always the strongest, but rather the most intelligent. China is not the only country making strides. Mongolia has also restarted its reintroduction efforts in the Gobi Bee strictly protected area. In a significant move towards ecological harmony, Kazakhstan welcomed its first returning horses in the year 2024. They came on a Czech military cargo aircraft. Via official agreements, China is exchanging extra foals for information about predators and Kulan migrations, establishing a regional conservation network through collaboration. By the end of 2024, China's wild horse population reached almost 400 animals. This brings them very close to the goal set by the Three-Star Project. Officials are looking at a potential new location near Qinghai Lake. Although nothing is definite yet, the advancements are evident. What was once viewed as a delicate project has turned into a hopeful model for success. What are your thoughts on reintroducing extinct animals into the wild? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more fascinating content. Thanks for watching.